Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the Musings from the Mount podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Carenza. As we are constantly bombarded with an unending stream of news and gloom and doom, we keep coming back to this idea that perhaps it's time for a systems check. In the world today, we're dealing with unprecedented levels of connectivity. Everyone's opinions and emotional states available at our fingertips 24 hours a day. Yet somehow, authentic communication seems to be getting worse, not better. As we started exploring this paradox, we realized that while we cannot control the larger systems spinning around us, there is one system we do have agency over, the ecosystem of self. So today we dive deep into what it means to take responsibility for our own inner landscape as a form of service to the whole. Why becoming a spiritual warrior has nothing to do with external battles, and how the free flow of love through the human system might be the only thing that can heal what ails us. This isn't about positive thinking or spiritual bypassing. It's about understanding our role in a much larger evolutionary moment. And we hope you enjoyed the episode. And if you do enjoy this podcast, please consider going to meditationmount.org and donating. Your donation, it helps us to bring you this very podcast, including all the programs that Mount produces both today and in the future. We are incredibly grateful and honored by your support. And now, back to the podcast as we do a systems check on the ecosystem of self. So we've recently done a run of episodes from the book Ponder on This, and we covered service in a 3-part series, and we just did this episode on the humor, and as we were looking sort of like, what should we do next, and we're looking at the world, and I thought maybe it's time for a systems check, and we were discussing before the podcast, what is a system, and we both kind of arrived at the same thing, is that the one system you really have control over, and maybe the only system you have control over, is the system of self. And
Yes.
and how there's that thing where the things that irritate you in the world, the things that irritate you in other people, are really chances for something. They're like the warning lights on your dashboard of your car telling you this is something that you need to work on. And that's we just thought we would delve into systems a little bit and making sure that kind of as things spin up and hopefully not spin out. We're all dealing with a sea change in the way that the world self-reports. We all have this connectivity to everyone that we didn't have before. We have, for better or for worse, we have everyone's opinion at our fingertips anytime we want it. And how do we deal with how do we keep our own sense of self, make sure that we're maintaining our health and not get spun out?
I think this is an incredibly important theme, Joey. Systems awareness, because every part of the system is important. We are now aware of all that happens inside a system. We have the data. We have the sensitivity that lets us know what's happening. And unless all of these parts are working together in harmony, you're not going to have health. At the moment, we don't have a healthy humanity. That system of lives that we call humanity is not really functioning at its optimum levels and its healthiest levels. And so when we explore, as we always do, we explore without blame or judgment. We witness what's happening. We draw an interpretation from it so that we can make adjustments. The reason we have self-awareness is so we can self-correct. If we don't self-correct, nothing will change. And I guess you pointed out the obvious place to start, which is the ecosystem of self, the universe of self. This is the world that we've been entrusted with to be good stewards of. And I think a lot of people don't have this realization. I'm not saying they have to, or this is the truth. But for me, unless I understand that I've been entrusted with looking after this particular system called Michael, this incarnated agent of the soul called Michael. Who else is going to do it? It's my primary responsibility. Now, others can help me, but I can't delegate that to somebody else. So I think what we're seeing is each person has to step up to being more responsible for their own ecosystem, and then together, humanity has to step up to being responsible for the greater system of which we are all a part. And I think we'll explore in this particular episode why, in this fractured state at the moment, we're experiencing disease. We're experiencing, if you like, ill health. There's a malaise that's present at the moment we're trying to fix. And it can only be fixed, if you like, one soul at a time, taking responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very, very generalized thing. But I believe that when we talk about a system, it's not just my ecosystem of self, it's the system that is the one humanity, but it's also the system of the one humanity functioning inside this ecosystem called the planet Earth. If we think that we can separate ourselves from the other lives that make up this sentient being called Earth, we're in for a shock.
Yeah, I think that's really the what intrigued me about this subject is that, there's, whether we like it or not, we are all super interconnected. We've always been that way. It's just now the veil has been kind of lifted from that, and sometimes we're feeling it, and sometimes we have a tendency to want to be not in my backyard. But now we're all in everyone's yard now.
Well, there is only one yard.
Yeah, exactly.
We're sort of responsible for different parts of it,
Yeah.
but there is one yard, and we're also responsible for the whole thing. I remember working in the corporate world, and I would meet with my clients, and then occasionally you'll have a cross-functional meeting. You have different departments come together, and normally when you have a finance meeting or a budget allocation meeting with different departments, they come into the meetings sort of wanting to leave with their wish list fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And my invitation to them is that you come in wearing your departmental hat, but when you're in this meeting with other departments, we all have to wear the same systems hat. Mm-hmm. So it may be that we get this aha that, no, it's right that we put more resources into this particular aspect of the system that happens to be called this department. Then the problem is when the head of that department goes back home to the people working in the department and says, no, I didn't get what we wanted.
Yeah.
What do you mean you didn't get what we wanted? You could say, we came away from that meeting strengthening the system.
Mm-hmm.
But because we think in separative ways, and we don't normally, by default, have a systems awareness that we practice, it's still us against the world, translated in different ways. And seeing myself as, an individual who's got to survive in the world, got to compete with others, and then I may cooperate with them, but I cooperate with them to, what's in it for me, what's in it for you. I'll scratch your back if you'll scratch my back. Mm-hmm. We're not scratching each other's backs. We're co-stewarding a larger system, which is a whole different, a whole different stepping up to the plate. Mm. So when you think about some of the ills that are presenting themselves now, what's the most obvious thing that looks in disarray or that is discordant or dissonant when you look at the system? Where's the dissonance in the current system that we might call either the planet or the one humanity, Joey?
Yeah. Oddly enough, I think now that we're all so super connected and can, find out what everyone is saying across the planet in an instant, communication has never been worse. And I think that when you stop talking, when you stop having a dialogue, even with the people that you may most strongly disagree with, well then, to put it in easiest terms, you're just not having a conversation. In life, it's conversation. So the breakdown of communication, and when we go from instead of talking, even if, like screaming at each other, even if it's on the internet, they're using all caps, if we're thinking in all caps, even it's just, when you have this preconceived idea that everything that you maybe disagree with is wrong, that's a hard place to start from.
Right, because rather than having a deep conversation and dialogue, there's this sense of bullying each other into a belief.
Yeah. And it's just, these are the lessons that we probably hope that we should have learned on the playground. But, sometimes life is just a big playground and we're just a bunch of kids in a sandbox.
And we haven't graduated from kindergarten as a human family.
Yeah.
That's just an observation. It's not a put down.
No. Also, it's just, I think it's an opportunity. I see it as an opportunity for us to deal with a lot of the unprocessed trauma, unprocessed hurt, and sometimes we misplace that. When someone says something to you, all of a sudden you're dumping all of this rage at your father or mother on this person that was just pointing out that you missed a comma somewhere.
Right.
I mean, I'm making really simplistic terms here, but this is, I find this in myself. I have this, my best friend who happens to work here at Cali, she's able to point things out to me. I'm able to point things out to her. And, but it took a lot of time and practice of mindful communication, and being able to see myself say, oh, that wasn't really how I meant to say that. And I could see how she would take that. So, just taking the time to manage your system of self so that you're not spilling your oil out over everyone.
Well, what you have then is an agreement with another person to evolve together, to help each other grow, and to redeem some of the patterns that are blocking the growth. That's a healthy agreement.
Yeah.
Where that is not present, you just get a slanging match.
Yeah, and we see that as the Wild West of the internet, but also the internet of our own hearts. I just I feel this dialogue that happens. A good sort of flashpoint is out here in California. We tend, not so much in Ojai as much, but there's a lot of homeless people, and you can see how people interact and how that makes them feel, and it's a flashpoint of how are you, if you give money to this person, are you helping that person? Are you helping perpetuate the problem? And it brings up this whole dialogue of emotions and energy. But it also, sometimes that person right there just needs a couple bucks for whatever they need it for, So I don't know. There's all these different levels and different ways that this works, but you forget that that is not a stranger. That's a fellow resident. That's a fellow person on Earth.
That's it. And even in Ojai, there are homeless, and the city is seeking to be progressive and to create more what they call a cabin village, creating a place where people can have just better housing. And there are people who are supporting this, saying, yeah, this shows that we're a compassionate city. And some of the neighbors in a more affluent area are against it because, it'll bring in crime, it'll bring in this, all the fear comes up. So what you're doing goes back to this thing we said before, am I my brother and my sister's keeper? And the answer is not yes or no, it's I am my sister, I am my brother. Until we get that we are aspects of the same parent, we are all children of the same creator. And then, but what's the obligation of that awareness?
Yeah.
And it's very difficult because you do need boundaries. It's like when you grow something in a garden, you have a patch, you grow it in this area. So you have to have places where things grow, but that where you allocate growth can't be a sort of a steel fence that blocks you off from life. It's like a permeable membrane. You have to have these divisions between different parts of a body. But unless there's a permeable membrane, they can't interact. They can't support each other. Energy can't flow through the system and nourish all the parts. It's a very tricky thing. And I think the thing that we have highlighted over and over again, Joey, is that we're at this turning point now in society where if we function not just individually, but nationally, in a selfish way, we cut ourselves off from the rest of the system of which we are a natural part. That's what you hinted at when we began the podcast. Therefore, it's easy to say, you take care of yourself and we'll take care of ourselves. And when you've got your act together, maybe we can talk. And that's a very different way than saying, how can we grow together as a human family? That it's the question you ask that calls forth the answer. So going back to this self-centeredness, if I can sort of take it, because we talked about the system's health, the health of a system. This is what I've been reflecting on recently. We know that energy follows thought. So anytime you or I think in egotistical or separative ways, we actually do a disservice to the entire community of all the lives on the planet. Because whenever the part, it could be me, an individual, it could even be a political party or religious movement, or God forbid, a nation, whenever that part seeks to make itself greater than others, or even to actually become the whole itself, then what we begin to see are the telltale signs and symptoms of what I call a re-emerging culture of colonization.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas the one seeks to take over the whole. We've been through that in different variations on the theme of several thousand years. All the different empires have done that. And we're dealing with the fallout of that. America, the dream of America, this wonderful experiment, was founded on, if you like, the removal of some indigenous people and their culture. Now, you clear the land and you prepare the land when you want to sow new seeds, but maybe not in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very delicate thing.
It is a very delicate thing. Yeah.
So this is where it leads me. So if this rise and spread of self-centeredness continues, where the part is very persistent and actually insistent in taking over the entire system, I believe society is in real danger of contracting a cancer. I call it a colonization cancer. So maybe we should just define what cancer is. I mean, the medical version of it, so people don't think we're just throwing these words around. My understanding that cancer is the term we use for diseases in which abnormal cells divide without control, and then they invade nearby tissues. So when you have an uncontrollable and invasive growth of one cell that just multiplies and seeks to take over the whole body, and actually to become the dominant life of that ecosystem, I believe this eventually will lead to a life-threatening disease inside the whole body. This is what I call the malignant malaise of selfishness that actually turns into this cancer. So the question, the big question is, how do we restore health to the system?
Yeah.
And we can explore that. For me, I have one simple, very high-level answer. Live from the heart. Because when I do so, the life-giving and nourishing qualities of loving kindness, caring, compassion actually flow from me like a river out into the world as a blessing. I don't have to turn it on. I just have to open the heart and it flows. Because we know from the Ageless Wisdom teachings that the soul is primed for giving. And it's said the natural urge of the soul is to give freely of its love in service. And we've said it's like a sun that radiates light and warmth and asks for nothing in return. So what we're saying is, how do we shift from being self-centered to a place where we are willing and able to contribute to the whole, the good of the whole? That is a huge change, because it means letting go of maybe how I view success in my life. It means letting go of possessions. It may mean letting go of a whole mindset and belief system of how the world should be. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I mean, I think that last thing you said there is an important thing to focus on, because we're all being asked or offered an opportunity to look at things in possibly a new or different way. I was thinking about this earlier today, is that, if we're all sort of like waiting for this next big thing to happen, but the reality is that most big things are preceded by a bunch of smaller things, and some people are better than others at seeing where things are going, where the dominoes are going. But the reality is that this is a kind of, if you will, initiation that we haven't faced before.
It is. And when you said it preceded by these smaller things, the image I have was a swarm of kindness.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I mean, I see that happening. I like to call them like, the humans 5.0, and I'm very optimistic about the younger generation of humans on this planet.
Yes.
And I see in them not just an unwillingness to run old patterns, but like almost like a hardware that won't, like a CD player that won't play a vinyl record. They're just not going to play these patterns that have plagued us for so long. Not everyone, and this is a generalization, but I'm very optimistic.
Well, you mentioned about facing this initiation, facing this test, and we've pointed it out on several of the podcasts that the Ageless Wisdom teaching says that we, for the first time collectively, are facing a test. It's called the first initiation, and it's the overcoming of the gravitational influence of materialism. It doesn't mean that matter's bad. It means that we can't live inside a prison of matter, because the whole thrust of evolution is to release the light that lives and is currently imprisoned in matter. This is the resurrection after the crucifixion. In non-religious terms, I'm talking about the release of the light of love inside the heart of every human being. You can't release the light of love if you still got the darkness of pain and trauma.
Yeah.
But inside that trauma is a deep light and a deep love that is there to be released. But it can't make it at the moment because it's held back by the past. Trauma relates to the past.
Yeah, so the resolving of these old patterns, these old injuries and harms, or like if you try to take the pain out of it, is these opportunities to learn.
It is, and so this first initiation, it sounds very grandiose, but it simply refers to. There are a couple of phrases that are associated with this initiation in the books. One is, it says that we cannot live by bread alone. And bread means materialism, matter. And also colloquially, bread is money. So we cannot live by bread alone. And then the key to actually overcoming that gravitational pull of materialism is the secret is hidden in the phrase, when the presence of a greater love is born within the cave of the heart of humanity, which simply means when my heart opens and awakens to the love that lives inside it, and I touch others, and I feel the connection with others, naturally, I want to give my love to that which I'm connected. And therefore, you have this outpouring. So you're moving away of all the energy coming in towards a center to the energy moving from a center out to bless the whole system. That's the turning point. So this is a major test that really breaks the patterns of involution, which was coming into matter, and shifts us and places our feet firmly upon the path of evolution, which is the liberation and release of the true light of who we are, that's using matter as the soil in which to be born. But it's not a garden at the moment. It's more of a correctional facility. It's more of a prison. So that, if you like, in simple terms, is what the ageless wisdom teaching says about this time. And if we don't overcome it, it means that the spirit of who we are will remain trapped, if you like, and not be able to freely sing its song. It's like inside of each one of us, there's the song of the soul. And there's this deep desire for us to sing our hearts out together. We can't do that if we haven't found our voice, and if we don't know that this song lives inside us, if we are still living in the dark. And living in the dark is living inside the imprisonment of matter.
Mm.
Once again, not saying matter's bad, I'm just saying matter is that first stage of growth, of darkness, and it's the womb out of which light is born. At the moment, it's not a womb. For a lot of people, it's a tomb.
Mm-hmm.
It's a place of death. It's a place where the spirit can't express itself.
Yeah.
And therefore, the urge for liberation and freedom has to do with, I want to be myself. But when you become your true self, you realize that I'm not alone, that I am my brother and sister, and therefore, naturally, my heart goes out to all my brothers and sisters. And then it goes out to all the beings that live upon this planet. Unless we have that shift, we're going to be locked inside the self-generated isolation of selfishness.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah.
That's the big one.
That is the big one. That is,
We've described it in so many different ways. I don't know how. I remember once we said that, the tipping point, we always call it the tipping point, to move from sickness to health in a society, is when we can live soul-inspired lives and move from an egocentric to an ecocentric model of living.
mm-hmm.
And in very general terms, this is a state of communal beingness where one is giving and not taking. It's very different.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, if we have created a system that is non-sustainable, that keeps us imprisoned, either in financial prison, emotional, or the prison of fixed beliefs and fanaticism, the question is, do we dare unhook ourselves from this present dependency on what we know deep in our hearts to be non-sustainable? And can we plug into a greater renewable source of goodness, which is what flows from the heart? I believe if and when, and I believe it will happen eventually, when this happens, it will be a radically transformed society. As you say, the new souls coming in are not going to stand for some of the behavior that's gone before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in a radically transformed society, I believe it's going to be normal to care for one another. It's going to be normal to give and forgive. And it's going to be normal to see each one of us and each living thing as valuable and vital aspects of this one system. I think and without that, we can't have systems health.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts with each person taking responsibility for their universe of self, their ecosystem of self. Then we do it for our communities. Then we do it for our nation. So this attempt to create a more perfect union rather than disunion.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have a disunited States of America or a disunited federation of Russia or whatever the country may be. In order to have the world come together, the component parts have to find wholeness inside themselves and then expand to a greater state of wholeness with other examples of wholeness.
Mm.
That's why we're here, to help each other, to support each other, grow into a greater wholeness. Because as we do that, we grow closer to each other. Because a greater state of wholeness eventually embraces everyone. They're not islands of separation. It's a sphere of living that is our home. We live inside this sphere of belonging. But if the sphere is my isolated self, then I'm going to protect it from invaders. I'm going to go out and plunder if I need something. I'm going to steal. I'm going to do whatever I need to do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So moving away from survival mentality to one of how can we allow the soul to be creative? How can we allow the compassion of the heart to set the norms, to declare the guidelines
Mm-hmm.
and the rules for how we live together? Because this whole thing of how we govern ourselves is huge. If you look at humanity from a distance, imagine you're from another planet, you're just looking at humanity, and you see, well, they got all these political parties, they got these systems of government, some are called democracy, some are called dictatorship, some are called, but basically it's humanity's current ability of agreeing how to live together and govern themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, an ecosystem doesn't have elections, doesn't have term limits. An ecosystem is self-governing.
Mm.
So when the heart can hold the whole system, I believe our humanity self-governs out of love, not out of power, not out of lack, not out of control, but out of a love and a knowing that we're part of a living system that is depending on us for its well-being.
Yeah.
That's a futuristic vision, but
one will probably look back on this old system and just think that we were so antiquated,
Well, what were we afraid of?
Yeah.
It goes back to what was the fear that didn't allow us to step into what our soul knows is obvious and inevitable.
Yeah.
So maybe you could name some of the fears that
I can tell you one of the techniques that I use because I notice myself, like especially when I'm dealing with maybe a topic or an argument or something that I don't agree with, and that's to use a principle called like the steel man. So, when you steel man someone's argument, you give a good faith retelling of their argument from the best possible position, and you do an honest attempt to state their position in good faith. And so why would you want to do that? What's the point? So find the thing that your touchiest point, whether it's politics, religion, money, and if there's someone that disagrees with you, see if you can state back their argument without being triggered, without losing yourself, as calmly as you can, and as in a good faith effort. And what I found was, just in doing that over and over again in different situations, was I felt my own temperature coming down. And then I also felt my often the best way to deal with a bad idea is to have a better idea, rather than trying to shout down a bad idea, is to come up with a better idea. And it inspired me, and it inspires me to put more in on my side, like think about things in more inclusive and more productive ways.
I think that's a really powerful way of doing it. It's basically saying, this is what I heard you say.
Mm-hmm.
It's like checking. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
This is what you said. Great, thank you. Without saying I disagree or don't like what you said.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are so many needs that we have as human beings, and 3 of them have been listed as to be heard, to be seen, and to be loved.
Yeah.
So it's being heard.
Mm-hmm.
What you've just described is somebody says, yeah, that's right. No, you heard what I say. No, you may not agree with it, but I was heard.
I mean, I can't tell you, how many times a potential tense situation or argumentative situation where when the other person does feel heard, all the sort of fire goes out of it. Oh, sometimes that's enough. They're just like, oh, well, yeah, you heard what I said. That's cool. All right, we can agree to disagree, or we can move on. Or it really does. It's just a matter of kind of almost honoring and respecting the fact that the other person is a human and has entitled to have their views and their freedom. And you don't solve a problem by shutting it out.
Well, warfare is the lowest form of communication.
Exactly. Well, Michael has been fond of saying in terms of an institution, you can replace a person, but you can't replace a pattern.
Right. If you remove a person from a group because they're a troublemaker and you don't like them, make sure that you remove that pattern from out of the collective psyche. Otherwise, central casting will send a replacement who's probably an even better actor.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that happen in so many situations,
Absolutely.
in communities, in the corporate world, in every walk of life.
And also just interpersonal relationships. Like
Yes.
like, why do we keep having the same argument for 20 years? Like what is, and it's like, wow, you can, or why do I keep dating someone and then after 2 years, the wheels come off every time?
Well, see, now you've touched on something, Joey, because we haven't learned that lesson
That's
yet.
right.
So what is an initiation? An initiation whereas all the unlearned things are presented to us in one huge test, in one huge classroom. So this first initiation that we stand in front of for the first time collectively, and the reason we can stand in front of it collectively is because we've got all this technology that connects us 24/7 instantly. It's bringing all the unresolved stuff from years and years and years of human history. In fact, in one of the podcasts, we even went back and said, what's being played out now on the planet, if you go back to some of the writings of the Tibetan master, the Master DK, he says that we are facing some of the unlearned lessons from Atlantis. Now, that may sound a little weird for some people, but let's see if we can put this into manageable terminology. So each civilization has its potential and its ability to grow, its capacity. Atlantis was really advanced technologically. It's said that they had airships that ran on the magnetic currents. They didn't use, carbon producing fuels. But they didn't have the deep ethical standing to use technology in the wisest and the kindest way. And in fact, they were so advanced in their technology that they could manipulate and misuse some of the elemental forces of nature in a way that, in fact, in the end, nature rebelled and caused the destruction. We set in motion things that had consequences. You reap what you sow. But the main point that the Tibetan made about Atlantis is at that time, we were facing a crisis because a few people, very powerful people, had seized control of everything. And they were misusing, through their psychic power and their selfishness, the resources of that civilization. And that, together with the misuse of the elemental forces, meant that this was not sustainable. We couldn't save this one, so you pulled the plug. It's like you say, you shook the Etch-a-Sketch and you started off with a blank canvas. Just because you destroy the classroom doesn't mean you've graduated. So what the Tibetan says is, here we are again, facing the first initiation, and with it is everything from the past that we still have to learn. And what we have to learn is that true power is here to serve the whole system. Power is not to be wielded by the few to control the many. That's the lesson carried over from Atlantis, and that's the lesson that's facing us now. And it's interesting to note that the people wielding the power in Atlantis, it said, were the scientists, were the politicians, were the people in power. And now we have politicians, and we've got the techno-billionaires. I'm not making these bad or wrong. I'm just saying we've reassembled the classroom, and we're facing the same test we faced and failed in Atlantis. That's why I believe there's this extra pressure now. And therefore, the forces of materialism is like the last gasp. And how do you break free of this? Well, you don't break free by killing something. You break free by not focusing your energy on it. So it doesn't hold you back. If I'm not identified with it, it has no hold on me. If I am emitting love, and if I am serving the whole, if my life is dedicated to the good of the whole, serving, the whole of humanity, then I may be affected by some of the things that the few do to the many, but the spirit of who I am will be untroubled, untouched. I will not be in prison. I cannot be imprisoned by any person who is wielding power it is impossible at a spiritual level. They can retard, they can slow down, they can delay the outworking of the unfolding of the soul of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't kill the soul. You can remove some of the forms that allow it to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't kill life. Life is. It's the forms that are temporal. So what we've got at the moment is a battle between forms called ideas, beliefs. Those are mental forms. Around feelings, those are emotional forms. And around things like money and possessions, these are the physical forms. These forms have to change. They have to be upgraded. They have to be recycled and upcycled in order that we have better forms that can serve the truth of who we are and the aspirations and promise of humanity. So there's power struggle at the moment. It may seem that all is lost. And how are we going to get out of this one? But go back to that simple answer I said, how do you restore health? Live from the heart. Now, this is not being wishy-washy and saying, oh, just be loving and kind. I'm thinking about being a spiritual warrior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and if you're going to look at spiritual warriors, I think one of the places you can go back to the Buddhist tradition. And I remember the 13th Dalai Lama, I think he died in 1933, he actually gave a discourse once on the Bodhisattva as a warrior in society. So I'd like to read that, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So this is the description that the 13th Dalai Lama gave. The Bodhisattva is like the mightiest of warriors, but her enemies are not common foes of flesh and bone. His fight is with the inner delusions, the afflictions of self-cherishing and ego-grasping, those most terrible of demons that catch living beings in the snares of confusion and cause them forever to wander in pain, frustration, and sorrow. I'm going to stop there so we can breathe. That just sums up the prison.
Yeah.
Then finishes, her mission is to harm ignorance and delusion, but never living beings. These she looks upon with kindness, patience, and empathy, cherishing them like a mother cherishes her only child. She is the real hero, calmly facing any hardship in order to bring peace, happiness, and liberation to the world. That, for me, is one of the most powerful statements I've ever read and come across. This description of the Bodhisattva. What does it mean to be a warrior? It doesn't mean to go and, go to your local store and buy your semi-automatic. So what does that declaration do to you when you hear the Dalai Lama's words?
Wow. I mean, it's inspirational because being a bodhisattva, of course, would be, I think that's what most people on this spiritual path that's sort of the ideal embodiment of spirit, because you are living for more than yourself. You are living for the system. You are here to lift up. And this idea that, and also I like the fact that he goes back and forth between him and her, because we hold Kuan Yin here in high esteem. So, but for me, it's this when you're called to this path. Also, things they hit you different. You see them in different ways, and I guess on a very practical term. Times like when you were talking about that, I was thinking again with communication and just asking that simple question: what was my part in this, and what was my part in contributing to how things are? Because if you can identify that, then you can identify a change that can change your own system health, which in turn changes the system health of everything.
basically they say that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That means that at some point, all you need is one more grain of sand to tip everything.
Yeah.
Well, it could be you that just generated that grain of sand.
Exactly.
I mean, each of us are responsible, because when you face the first initiation collectively, you're facing a collective karma, but you're also embracing a collective dharma.
I mean, this might be sacrilegious to say too, but so many groups are looking for the second coming of some Messiah, whereas I tend to think that we are all the second coming, and so it's collectively we have to move it.
It's the birth of that wisdom within us, and what that does is, because there are already beings who have reached that level of consciousness, sometimes just to have that, like you put a photograph of somebody on your desk to draw strength from. What happens if you get an actual living hologram of a Christed figure reappear to inspire us? So, because it's the same, basically saying, look, what I have done, ye shall do yet and even greater things. I mean, so I don't see it as an either or. I see it as the whole thing is it's the revelation of the inner light.
Yeah.
And the inner light is the light of Christos, and that predates Christianity. We're talking about the name that was given to the inner light of truth, the Christos. And so the Christos is waiting to be born inside every human heart. And as the first initiation says, the key is when the presence of a greater love, i.e. the Christos, is born within the cave of the human heart. That's the only way out of this. We won't get out of it by employing an army of AI bots.
Yeah.
It's the opening of the heart.
Yeah. I think that's
compassionate warrior.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's the part of the individual in the cosmic collective play,
And what you just said is, if we're just waiting for an outside person to come and rescue us, ain't going to happen.
Exactly.
Nobody's going to rescue us, because the whole idea of being on Earth is to learn and to grow together. Therefore, we're in a classroom. If we're in a classroom, let's learn this lesson that we faced and failed before, and then let's graduate. And we know that you can only graduate once you've opened the heart, and love is born within your heart.
Yeah.
It ain't getting smarter.
That's right.
Employing AI to make you even more knowledgeable
or clever. It's
not.
Or clever. It's not being more clever.
No, it's about being able to hold the whole system in my heart as a part, and to play my part in the whole system. May I play my part in the one work, through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. Those are the last, that's the last lines of an affirmation that the Tibetan gave, that we could use every day at 5 p.m. But it's very, very powerful. So you can get into a whole thing of, well, is there going to be a second coming? I don't believe it. What there will be a revelation of the light of truth within the heart of the individual, within the heart of the collective realm of souls, which is the fifth realm, and within the heart of the planet. Because eventually it's within the heart of the solar system. It's within the heart of all creation. That's the culmination. That's the crowning glory. That's the crown of creation.
Yeah.
When the light of Christos blazes forth from the heart of all. Now that's many chapters away. But what we're facing now is the next step of liberating ourselves from the pull of matter and the imprisonment of matter, so that we can work with matter to create more beauty and to redeem matter and to actually raise its frequency. And when you raise the frequency of something, it starts to emit light. It becomes radioactive.
And in that sense too, in case this seems too overwhelming or too much for any one person to take on, I had kind of a chuckle this morning because I used the Insight Timer app, and I look back and I said, I have 1,250 days today that I've meditated not in a row. I missed a day here and two, but I remember when I was first starting with the app, and it was literally day one, and I could barely meditate for 5 minutes. And I was looking at all these people that had like, thousands, sometimes 10,000s of days. And I was like, oh my God. And, a journey of 1,000 steps starts with one. And you can literally, you listening can change. Yeah, you can change everything, by changing one thing of yourself and by taking, I think there's that responsibility,
And the change will be anything that helps you shift from self-centeredness, from ego to ecocentric living.
Mm-hmm.
That for me, it has to be there. It can't just be a nicer version of selfishness.
Right. That's true. I saw this thing online too that says that one of the biggest problems we're facing now is everyone's just trying to make enough money so that the problems of the world don't affect them. And I thought, wow, that's pretty profound, actually. It's like the silo approach is not going to help you out of the situation. It's not. We're past that. You can't just go build a bunker and wait this whole thing out.
Well, you said at the beginning of this podcast, we need everyone, all the characters present.
Yeah.
If you and I and everyone listening to this podcast doesn't show up, that particular gift is not present on the planet.
That's right.
We are the bearers of a gift that nobody else is carrying.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if it's the Garden of Gaia, there's a flower missing if you don't show up.
That's right.
A particular color and fragrance that's missing. The garden is not complete without you. The garden is not complete without us growing together.
Yeah.
I mean, that for me is the key.
Oh, I like that, growing together. Yeah. Yeah. We're like regenerative farming, or, like the crop rotate. We all have to do it. We have to do it together,
We have to, and you don't need pesticides. I've done organic farming where you don't need pesticides. You have companion planting, where some plants, if you plant them next to each other, they protect each other from bugs and insects, and they support each other's growth. So it means that there are natural pairings and combinations and relationships in a system that take care of its health.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that takes care of the health of a system is the free flow of chi, of the life force around the system. Whenever there's a blockage, you get disease. So if I'm part of a system that's being blocked because somebody is being separative, that energy doesn't reach the whole of the body of humanity. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. Imagine my body. Sometimes if I sit awkwardly and I get up and I can't feel my leg, it's gone numb. I've got to wait for the blood to come back.
Yeah.
There are parts of our human family where the blood is not circulating. It's been cut off. It's been numbed out. And we either neglect them, take pity on them, or try to help them by colonizing them.
Yeah. I really love that analogy. The blood is not circulating to the whole system. And, that's, how do you do that in a way that, that honors both parties? And I think that is, I always come back to this, but you support the person, not the pattern,
Right. And when you understand that the true lifeblood of the human system is love.
Mm-hmm.
We are recording this in the 2-month period when we're focusing on the principle of goodwill, which says that goodwill is love in action. It's loving kindness in action. It's love acknowledged as the glue that holds all relationships together. It's the blood and the life force that sustains everything. So when we're not talking about love as a sentimental concept. Mm-hmm. We're talking about love as the most fiery, dynamic nutrient and sustainer of life that is. It's also the reason why life exists, we're told, because it's creation is so that love can be revealed. And the love that's created the universe, the origin of origins, can know love firsthand through itself, through its many selves, touching each other and realizing they're part of oneself.
Mm-hmm.
So we go back to this, it's the return of the many to the one. At the moment, we're stuck in the ones.
Yeah.
And therefore, you have nation states that are separate. You have individuals that are separate. You have political parties that are divided and incredibly separate. We don't see that we are the many aspects of the one. E pluribus unum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Out of the many, one.
Out of the many, one. Yeah.
So any other angles or any other doors you want to open when we're talking about systems health? Because you can't leave anything out of the system. Systems health means that all the parts of a system have to be nourished, have to be part of the flow.
Yeah. On just a sort of basic kind of approach, and to kind of touch back on communication, and this was a concept that someone gave me. So it was, if you are having resistance to, like, for instance, a good idea comes from someone or from a side you don't agree with. And, this is what the person told me. So imagine that what they're saying is written on a Post-it note, and you just happen to read the Post-it note. You don't know where it came from. You just saw the sentence. Would that suggestion, argument, point of view still hold up? And that's kind of a thing that I've used. I mean, just imagine what they're saying on a Post-it note, not who is saying it, and it's amazing how when you depersonalize it like that, like, truth comes from the weirdest places.
Well, by personalizing it in that way, you remove the emotional charge that was triggered in you.
Yeah.
And you can see clearly.
Yeah.
You can't see through emotional fog. It gets distorted.
Right.
The colors get distorted. Everything gets distorted. But if you just to come upon this saying that resonates, and then you find out, oh, it was written by somebody who has a totally different belief system.
Mm-hmm.
But then you realize that what they're saying yes to is what you're saying yes to. It's just they have a different way of expressing what that yes is.
Yeah.
We don't get to yes that way.
Yeah, that's true.
How do we get to yes, Joey?
Yeah. Well, generally we have to sit down and talk.
Well, first of all, I have to get to yes with myself.
That's true.
I have to say yes to life. I have to say yes to the responsibility of being a steward of an ecosystem of health. Then I have to sit down with my coworkers and say, yeah, okay, we're here together. I'm not just going to tough it out until it's time to go home and then I can forget you all.
Right, because we're not just co-workers, we're co-creators. And so if everyone has that agency of co-creation, you can keep people on the outside for forever, but you're never going to coalesce,
And also because we are organized in the workforce and we're organized in the industrial society in ways where you say, well, we let go of so many thousands of federal workers were fired, rather than saying 5,000 of our fellow citizens no longer have work. It's a different language. When we just package it as federal workers, no, these are human beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if a Post-it note says 5,000 of your fellow humans are now without work and livelihood, it's different than this happened to this part of a structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we destructure, we also can dehumanize.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I mean,
all right. Well,
what we need is a Department of Government Empathy, DOGE. Well, I think that's been taken, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's been taken.
Okay.
It could be repurposed again.
Okay.
It was repurposed, and now we can repurpose it again. So the Department of Governmental Empathy. Yeah.
Well, anyway, may angels guide America.
Yes, please.
Oh my God, that's MAGA, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh. All right.
Anyway, I think what we're saying is that you can't take sides.
Yeah.
There's the inside, which is where the truth lives, and the outside where it has to be demonstrated and put into action.
Yeah.
And it's the love that lives inside the human heart that connects us all and that will heal us all. And it's the only portal through which something new can be born. So this is what it means, systems awareness. systems healing. Begins with each one of us, I guess.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you, Michael. That was beautiful. That was a beautiful systems check.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
All right.